That's it.
Thank you guys. Welcome. And thank you guys for having me over here to Tel Aviv. This is fantastic. It's a little bit of a trip for me. So I want to start out with you guys asking you all a question. How many people here have ever been to a party before? Sweet, this is a good crowd. So parties are really cool, right? Because we have really great conversations. In fact, we kind of had like a little party out here before we got started with our event this morning. We had a lot of people talking and conversations, talking to one another. And the really great thing about these type of situations is that the time really flies by. If you've been to a great party or something like this, you realize that you look at your watch and you go, oh my gosh, I've just spent hours at this thing. Right? And you don't even know it. Compared to other times in your lives, maybe doing IA work, when the time seems to crawl. It's interesting when we think about conversation because it really gets us into this flow state. If anybody's read the book Flow by Csikszentmihalyi, he talks about the state of flow. Getting in there and time flies by and there's all these components to that. And that's what conversation is. And so what I want to look at today is really talking about what makes for great conversation. Why is this? Why is it that we can talk to people and things just fly by and the world seems to disappear and we get very enwrapped? And why is it other times that we have conversations and it's like pulling teeth? It's a horrible experience and we just can't wait to get out of it, right? Because I think there are specific moments that help define these conversations and make them either great or either bad. And I think as designers who are designing products and conversations between users and the things that they're using, I think that we can learn a lot from how these things are structured. So first, a little bit about who I am. My name is Justin Davis. It's great to meet all of you. I hope we get to talk a little bit after. I came all the way from there, Tampa, Florida. Anybody been to Florida before? Holy cow, that's a lot more than I was expecting. Wow, anybody been to Tampa? Let's narrow this down. Wow, anybody been to my street? Fantastic, awesome. You can find me at the world's most unusable Twitter handle, at JWD2A. It's really terrible. I apologize, and I realize the irony of doing user experience design and having a Twitter handle like this, so I'll give you a second to write that down. Fantastic. I run a little shop, a little micro agency, as I like to call it, called Madeira Labs. We do user experience, product strategy, and that type of work, all the kind of same stuff that you guys are doing every day. And I have another startup that I'm working on called Drawer. It's a travel startup. We just put an app in the App Store, so you can check that out as well. So let's get back into this. How do conversations work? A colleague of mine and I have been looking at this question. We've been trying to understand how people have conversations. Why do we have really great long conversations sometimes? Why are some of them bad? How do we get from topic to topic to topic in conversation? And what are the things that drive that? Well, here's all your answers. That's what a conversation looks like. How exciting, right? Isn't that great? That's a conversation. I know, wow, those parentheses turned up backwards. So that's what happens when you export from Keynote to PowerPoint and don't check all the slides. Perfect. So this is sort of what a conversation looks like. When we're talking to somebody, this is actually how it goes. And it's like this long wave, like this, right? That's doing this kind of thing, a sine wave, if you will, kind of like a blocky, weird sine wave. And each one of these waves is a topic. As we're talking, we talk about a topic, and then we switch to another topic, another topic, another topic, another topic, all the way through until the conversation ends. Now, this sounds a little bit obvious, right? But this is sort of how conversation happens. Very good. So what I want to do is I want to look at one of these waves inside of a conversation. We call it a topical wave. How do we get into a single topic? How does that topic live? And how do we leave it and start talking about another thing? Now this sounds like a really stupid thing to talk about, but it's all going to make sense in a minute, right? Because this is a very intuitive thing that we all do as humans. We have conversations very easy. We don't think about, oh man, I need to come up with another topic. We don't get anxious about that usually. If anybody does, I apologize. But I typically don't. But this is how this works. And I want to walk through the components of this and what we think are how the topics work, and then we'll look at how this applies to our design. So here's what happens. A topic starts with this, what we call the point of impulse. This is a thing that if you imagine that there's sort of an imaginary line right here that is 0, that represents nothing happening, unity, if you will. There's something that happens that gets us talking about a thing. That's the point of impulse. It's as simple as somebody saying, hey, did you hear about the Malaysian Airlines flight? Or something like that. Boom, now we're off and running. We're talking about something. The topic is the Malaysian Airlines flight. And the wave goes up. Now the height of this wave, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in detail in a second, represents the level of interest that the people have in this particular topic, the level of engagement, if you will, okay? So a topic gets introduced, and whew, the interest level goes up as people start to talk about it. That leads us into this point here that we call the Plateau of Interest. The Plateau of Interest is where we really sort of are talking about this topic ongoing. Hey, did you hear about the flight? I did hear about the flight. Wow, what a mystery, what a tragedy, right? We're talking about this thing. We're just sort of volleying back and forth in conversation. Everybody's interested in the topic continues going. Now, eventually, like all good things, that comes to an end. We get into what we call the slope of decay. The slope of decay is where the topic kind of starts to wind down. We usually feel this in a conversation. We usually unconsciously feel it and react to it. And that's where we're kind of like, okay, we've talked about this thing enough. Let's go talk about something else now, right? And that happens with yet another point of impulse. Just like we saw at the beginning, where somebody says, oh man, speaking of flying, let me tell you about my flight over here to Tel Aviv. So now what we've done is we've gone from one topic, the Malaysian Airlines thing. We've talked about it for a little while. That's happened. We decay that out. Somebody says something else. We call this a segue. We'll talk about the different types of segues in a bit. And then we're off and running into another topic. And this happens over and over and over and over again throughout a conversation. There's one last little measurement I talked about this a second ago called topical amplitude. Topical amplitude, and I apologize for all the very nerdy type of words I'm using for this. Sorry, I have a tendency. The amplitude, the height of this wave represents how interested, how engaged people are in this conversation. We've all probably been in a conversation where somebody brings up a topic, starts talking about something, and everybody just kind of rolls their eyes. And we're like, here we go. Very low amplitude. And then other times we have a topic where everybody's really talking a lot, right? And they're going back and forth for a long period of time. Really high amplitude. Well, this is really important because we can actually measure this. And we can use the measurement here of this amplitude to know how engaging an interaction is. And I hope now you're starting to see why, as designers, these type of things are pretty important to what we do. So what does this have to do with UX, user experience? We're going to pick on that guy the entire time. What does this have to do with us as designers? This is a great, nice theory. This is a great little bit of very ethereal information about how people talk. But as designers, what does it matter? Well, has anybody seen this video before of the people shopping and the conversation between this and the cashier? Show of hands. I'm sorry? Yes. Google Analytics video? Not many people. Good. I want to show you this. Oh, I don't know how to actually do that. Oh, wait. Maybe this? Nope. That's certainly not it. Okay, great. Well, can you get me back to that slide, please? Oh, is there a separate video file somewhere that's... Oh, here we go. Very good.
MM 1983?
No.
Zandy Pops? Sorry. Zandy Pops?
No, okay, don't worry, I'll help. What's your postcode?
Oh, it's a GU749ZT.
Welcome back, Nick Forever. Please listen carefully to this bread license agreement before continuing with your purchase of a loaf of bread. If you do not, blah, blah, blah. You also agree not to use any bread-based product for any purposes prohibited by United Kingdom law, including without limitation the design, development, manufacture of missiles, chemical, nuclear, or biological weapons.
Tick.
I'm afraid you've timed out.
What? Sorry. Hello? Excuse me. Oh, yeah, hey.
Just one loaf, sir.
Yeah, we just...
What's your username?
It's Nick Forever, but number 4, not the...
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to check that you're a real person. Could you say that for me?
It's not even a word.
Okay, how about this one?
You know what, forget it.
Or this one?
Hippo Potter Nice.
You're in.
Great, I'm in.
£8.85.
It's supposed to be 98 pence.
Plus express delivery.
What's that?
Oh, well, it's express delivery. It's fast. So there's, Standard.
Standard.
Standard delivery, that's £4.99.
Why?
Bread insurance. You didn't untick the don't decline bread insurance option.
You know what? I think I'll risk it.
It is quite close to the sell-by date.
Don't care.
98 pence it is. If you want to pop back in 5 business days, it'll be ready for your collection.
Well, I need it now, obviously.
Oh, OK. You want the take-home today price? Well, that's £3.27.
You know what? I'm going to go.
Come back soon.
I won't.
All right. Really great video. Yeah. That feels like a lot of experiences we've probably had online, right? The thing about it is that when we hang on just a second as I get through this, in case anybody missed it, there it all is. Interactions online, as we see here, are conversations. It happens just like that, right? When we talk, or when we interact with a web app or website or service or whatever it is, we're actually sort of having a conversation. We're having a conversation with it, and we're also having a conversation with the people behind it by proxy of the website. And so I think if we understand how conversations work and how to make conversation better, we can make interactions better. So, what I want to look at then is I want to take this idea of the topical wave that we looked at a second ago, right? The single topic inside of a conversation, and look at it now through the lens of user experience design. And let's talk about it that way. Just like the wave, it has the same points to it. We just call them different things. So in the original topical wave, you'll remember that we talked about this thing called the point of impulse. That's what gets us into a topic and talking about this thing. Well, same type of thing happens with a web app. We have this thing that we call engagement or discovery, right? And that's the thing that gets somebody into an interaction with us. It's the first point, it's the first step, right? And they start to actually use our service. Now, if it goes well and we actually successfully get them to engage with us, we go right up the wave into essentially what is the plateau of interest, the engagement and use component of this. This represents sort of as somebody now has, let's say they've logged into your app, they've logged into your site, they've started participating in your service, whatever it is, and they're in there and they're using it and they're going back and forth, right? This is the volley of conversation, okay? It's important to note that this wave that you're seeing from kind of end to end represents like a single session, right? A single time that somebody interacts with you. And that when the topic ends, quote unquote, is when they sort of distance and now they're not directly interacting with you, but they're going to again, we hope, right? So there's this engagement and use piece, and that brings us into, remember, the slope of decay, where we're like, okay, we're tired of this topic. Well, people, get tired of using your thing. As much as we want people to probably use our websites, services, apps, all that kind of thing for 24 hours, 7 days a week, unfortunately, it doesn't really work that way in the real life, usually, unless you're Facebook. And people will disengage. They'll leave. They'll go away. And that's okay. We want that to happen because we don't want people to burn out, right? So disengagement is an important part of the interaction. And then there's another re-engagement component, another point of impulse. So just as like conversation, a topic in a conversation starts with something that gets us into a topic, happens for a little while as we talk about it, and then switches to another topic. So does an interaction start with an initial thing, gets us into using it, disengagement, and then back in eventually. And this happens over and over and over again with backward parentheses. And it's really, this looks very strange like that. Anyway, just like a conversation, this is what an interaction looks like. It's the same thing. So the total length of this conversation from beginning to end, from right here, there's probably a pointer on this, from right here all the way to here, is the total lifespan that a user interacts with your service, from the time they find out about it to the time they never come back again. That's the conversation, right? Now, sometimes these conversations are going to be really long, right? Sometimes the conversations will be very short. It all depends on what we're designing, who we're designing for, and that type of thing. But the fact of the matter is we go through these little use it type of waves. So what I want to do then is look at each part of this, each component of this wave, and talk about how we design for it in the real life so we can finally get out of the clouds and actually into some practical components here. So the first part is engagement and discovery. Somebody needs to find out about what we've created, and they need to get into using it. Well, let's think for a second about conversation, right? When we're having a conversation and we're in a group maybe or one-on-one and we want to start talking about a thing, how does that work? Well, Usually it's pretty automatic, right? Usually we sit down and we just start talking, or you walk up to a group and you say, hey, I'm Justin, blah, 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 what are you talking about, blah, blah. You don't usually say that. That's a little bit strange. Hi, what are you talking about? I want to see if I want to participate in this conversation. Very odd. But usually it's very easy and very organic, right? Usually we don't walk up to a crowd and have the crowd of people say, oh, could you just tell us who you are and create a password to be involved in the conversation and check all these boxes and all that, right? That would be a very off-putting social situation, right? Well, the same type of thing happens here. One of the ways, and what I'm talking about here is a technique that we use called gradual engagement. Gradual engagement is the way that we get people into an interaction as quickly and easy as possible, right, into the conversation. Instead of saying, okay, there's a whole lot that you have to do before you can actually start to talk to me being the web app or the website, what we want to do is go ahead and start the conversation early instead of waiting. So this is an example that I first saw Luke Wroblewski use. Luke is a fantastic author and speaker if you ever get a chance to read or see him. And this is an example he used a lot, which I really love. It's a website called Genie. And Genie, it's an ancestry and genealogy website where you can create family trees and this type of thing. And instead of coming to the site and having it say, hey, okay, what is your, create a username, create a password, what's your email address, check this little box, all this. Instead of that, Genie says, hey, okay, you have your father and your mother, probably, typically how this happens, and then there's you. So go ahead and put your name, Justin Davis, because we know that that's your name, and your name needs to be on the family tree, because that's how family trees work, and your email, and presumably, because we're going to email you your tree and a link to it and that type of thing, and are you male or female, because that's also important to a family tree, right? You notice there's no create a password here, there's no how often would you like to receive our emails, and all that kind of thing. All of these components relate directly to the task of creating a family tree. And so from the user's perspective, this starts the conversation immediately. It's not like walking up to the group and saying, hi, I'm Justin, all this kind of thing. It's, oh, great, well, we're talking about ancestry, we're talking about your family tree, go ahead and start talking with us. This is gradual engagement. It's really, really useful, and it's a very good technique to use to start that conversation. Robert Hookman Jr. wrote a book called Designing the Obvious. It's a fantastic book that covers some really practical usability components. And one of his axioms in the book is turn beginners into intermediates immediately. And what this means is that when people come into a service or an app or something like this that we're using, they need to understand and get up to speed with the terminology, how it works, where things are, and all this. So that they go from this uncomfortable, weird state into really understanding how to use the application as quickly as possible. One of the ways that we can do this is by giving people an experience at the beginning of the application that walks them through this process in a very conversational way. Has anybody ever used the app Vine? A few people, good. So Vine, for those of you who don't know, is a little micro video blogging app. And essentially you can create these, I think they're like 7 or 10 second videos, I can't remember now, 6 something. And you can create those, and they're made up of little clips. 1-2 second clips at a time sometimes that are kind of cross-cut together. When you think about it, it's actually a fairly difficult process to do because you kind of have to like record a second of video, then record another second, or another second, and kind of jam all those together into one 6-second video. It's like real-time video editing on a mobile device, which actually is a very difficult task for people to do. So Vine, in order to get you to understand how to do this well, instead of sort of having you sign up and just land in the app with a plus button for create a new video, Vine takes you through that process. They say conversationally, oh, so we're going to talk about creating a video. Here, let us introduce you to the topic, and we'll tell you sort of what we're talking about and how to understand the conversation. So you come in and it says, are you new to Vine? We can walk you through how to do this. And then you walk through creating a video the first time. And Vine only records when your finger's on the screen. Okay, I got it. Press and release at different times those simple videos like this one. Cool, that makes sense. I can even see that video, so I understand exactly what we're talking about. And then, as I start to create a video, Vine says, keep holding, right? Which is really nice, because what they're doing is instead of sort of leaving in better in society, you can be easy to talk to, right? Don't be really difficult and weird and, kind of socially awkward. Be easy to talk to, right? Here are some tips for how to do that. Be polite. Don't call people names and call people out and that type of thing, generally speaking, unless you know them well, right? So be polite and be attentive. Make sure that you're focusing on who's in the conversation. You're paying attention to people so that people don't think that you're just sort of drifting off and not listening, right? These are rules that we kind of live by with regular conversation. Well, we could do the exact same thing on the web. So being easy to talk to is about, being easy to talk to. It's about not requiring a lot of effort on the part of the other person to interact with you. And in our web things and our services and all those kind of things that we're creating, we can use this same idea to make things easier, make the conversation go better. Medium.com, really great site, and it's a really interesting site. They do this very well. Part of being easy to talk to is just sort of getting out of the way, right? My mom told me once, she was a really great conversationalist. She can talk to people all day long, for better or worse sometimes. And she told me once, she said, Justin, if you're ever in a conversation with somebody and you don't know what to say or you're not really sure what to do, just ask them about themselves. Because if you ask somebody about themselves, they'll talk and you get out of the way and you let them just have conversation and they will actually think that you're the best conversationalist in the world, right? But really, you just don't know what to say, so you ask them to talk, right? Well, we can do the exact same thing on the web. Medium.com does this pretty well. On Medium, it's basically like a giant global blog. It's really cool, so you can contribute these articles and stories, which is cool. And I actually like that they call them stories, not articles or posts, because I think it's a nice change in labeling that gets the emotional component of what they're trying to do pretty well. But when you come to Medium and you want to write something, there's no fanfare about it. There's no set this up, set that up, choose a category to put it in, do this, that, and the other. It's just a button that says New Story. And when you click this little button up here in the corner that says New Story, this is what you get. You literally get a new story. Right? There's no Chrome, there's no font selector, no bold, none of this. There's no tags, all of that. There's simply, here's a title, here's a subtitle, and go write. Oh, and you can put a cover image too. This is it. This is getting out of the way. This is being easy to talk to, right? Because with Medium, as a user, you come in and you're like, I want to write a story. I want to write a story, right? And that's what I want to talk about as a user. That's the topic, right? And then when we get in, Medium says, cool, you want to write a story? We got that for you. Write your story. They get out of the way, and they're very easy to talk to. Paper is another really great app that does this. Anybody use Paper on iPad? Oh, man. Not near as many people as I thought. If you haven't used this app, you probably should because it's really fantastic. It won an Interaction Design Award, I think, in 13 or 12. And it's a sketching app. It's simply a sketching app, but it's done very brilliantly. Paper also gets out of the way, and it's very easy to talk to. Because instead of starting up Paper and you want to sketch something, you want to make some notes, it doesn't say, do you want grid paper, line paper, dot paper, blank paper, blah, blah, blah. Do you want this size, what type of pen do you want to use? No. You tell Paper, I want to write something, and it gives you a blank sheet. And you can't see the blank sheet here. I probably should have put that up. But it gives you a blank sheet. And you have this palette of tools here, which is actually usually hidden. This is below here, and you just swipe up on the bezel, and you'll see these tools. But the great thing is when you open Paper, you start immediately. There's no fanfare. It's very easy to get into the conversation with Paper. Secondly, we need to be polite. Now, we don't call people names usually in general conversation. We don't insult people and make people uncomfortable. We try to respect these kind of social rules. We should do the same thing on the web. Now, on the web, the key to keep in mind here is that people aren't interacting with a machine. They're interacting with you, your company, your brand, whoever you're representing. They're interacting with you. It's just mediated by a piece of technology. That's all. Right? And so just like you would be polite to them if you were on the phone, I hope, you want to be polite to them via online. And there's almost no place that this is done more poorly than with forums. Forums are the place where we have sort of the first really deep interaction usually with a user. It's where we're asking them to provide a lot of information. There's a lot of back and forth, a lot of micro moments that go on during the completion of a form that are very interesting moments. It's a pretty hyperactive component. This is a really great example of how not to design a form. This is from a website called TalkShoe. I don't even know if TalkShoe's around anymore. Based on this form, they probably aren't. And you come to this form, and it's at the outset, it's not terrible. It is a little weird. User creation, I think that's a terrible label. Like, I'm already created, I think. Like, this is a very strange thing. This is a very machine-centric way of speaking, right? Username, password, confirm password, email, phone, PIN, age, show age, average, all this. We can talk later about whether or not they should be taking all these fields or whatever, but that's not the point. The point is, if you do something wrong, things really go off the rails really fast, like this. So you get this message that says, action did not complete. What action? Like, I clicked the submit button. Like, that was the I think I completed the action, right? This makes absolutely zero sense. And not to mention, it's up here, it's in big, bold, red letters. It's very angry, right? And then we go down, these are no better, right? The password, invalid password, must be between 6 and 20 alphanumerics. AZ 09 _ can begin with any sequence. This is not how we talk to people. This is not a very polite thing to do, right? If you asked for somebody, you said, hey, we're gonna have a secret club. Can you give me a password for the secret club? Give me your password. And somebody said, oh, Oreo. Right? You wouldn't be like, oh, sorry, invalid. It must be between 6 and 20 alphanumerics. It can't begin with any sequence, and these are the characters that you can use, right? You would say, oh, you know what, that's a little bit short. It's probably going to be easy for people to guess. Can you make something a little bit longer? Maybe something a little bit more difficult, right? That's how we talk to each other. This is horrible. This is a terrible way to talk to somebody. And it gets no better with the email address component, right? We put an email address. Obviously, that's not an email address. Invalid email address. Well, okay. What's a valid email address, right? I might not know the answer to that, right? I mean, if we were talking to somebody and they gave us this as their email address, we would say, oh, it doesn't look like there's an @ symbol there. Are you sure this is an email address? That's how we talk to people. That's being polite. This is just terrible. So forms are one of the places that we can immediately go to increase the quality of these interactions. One of the things I tell clients to do a lot when I work with them is write error messages first. Put the marketing department or the copywriters on this, not the developers, and have them at the beginning of the project create all the error states. Where are people going to make a mistake, all this, and write that copy of how you're going to communicate that. Because what happens usually is this is left to a developer who's writing this test case, and it's like, oh no, man, if they don't put the right thing in. And how many developers here? Okay, I write some code too. That's good, not too many. Good, so we can talk bad about them. Sorry to the few. Developers really aren't very good at writing, let's be honest. They're very good at code. They're not very good at communicating, typically speaking. And so leaving this to somebody in that department might not be the smartest thing. A third thing that we can do in conversation is be attentive. Being attentive is really about being present and understanding what's happening on the other side of the screen. Right? Remember that when you design something, there's a person, a human being using that thing. Not like a nameless face, not a nameless thing interacting with it. It's a human with a name and a history and a family and emotions and all that kind of thing, right? And just like you would want to be attentive to them as well, when you're in person, our website should do the same thing, right? Pandora actually does this. Now, they do it for a slightly different reason, but I think it's still an interesting example. With Pandora, if you walk away from the computer and they detect that, say, the mouse isn't moving, there's no character input from the keyboard, they'll actually ask after a while, are you still listening? It doesn't seem like you're there anymore. This is actually a really cool piece of attentiveness, because Pandora has said, well, how are we going to know if somebody's still there? Now, they're doing it for licensing rights because they have to pay for every song, and so they don't want to play songs when somebody's not sitting there, right, obviously. So there's a bit of an ulterior business motive, but it's still very good, because instead of taking the dumb approach, they've been very smart about it. And they said, how can we know, how can we be more attentive to the fact that somebody is or isn't sitting on the other side of that screen? And they do this. It's really well done. Another piece of being attentive is making sure to respect some social boundaries and some social rules, right? Can I get somebody in right here? Can somebody help me out? Somebody here? Can you help me out for a second? Yeah, you can. In fact, yeah, you can actually stand right there because it won't take very long. Okay. So, hi, I'm Justin. Hi, I'm Shaba. Great to meet you. So, what I want you to do, just ask me. Just say, Justin, how are you? Oh, I'm great. Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm doing really well. Thank you so much. That's all I needed you for. Okay, that was a weird interaction, right? There was like this palpable awkwardness in the entire crowd. And on his part too. You see, he repeated the question, I don't know if you could hear, but he asked me how I was, and I didn't say anything. And then he asked me again, and I didn't say anything. And there was this very weird bit of tension there, right? Everybody in the room probably felt that, including me. Well, the thing about it is that what he didn't know is I was actually working on a response. I was actually processing in my head, right? The thing is, I flew all the way here from Tampa. It was about 15 hours of flying. I'm tired. We've been traveling around a lot. I was a little bit jet lagged, you know, all this kind of thing. I was still reeling from the strange interaction we had during Eric's presentation, right? And so what I was doing, actually, as we were sitting there, is I was trying to think about what the appropriate response was going to be. But he didn't know that because I didn't let him know that I was thinking about that. Usually what happens in conversation is that we talk to people, we have these little inaudible cues, or audible, but unintelligible cues, right? Where somebody says, oh, how are you? And you say, and we kind of stutter and we put all these type of things in there. Those are our loading indicators in real life, right? Those are the things that say, oh, I'm working on a response, hang on, I'll get back with you in just a second, right? But when we don't do that, it's very awkward. And the same thing happens online. When we have people interacting with us, remember it's a conversation. We should be making sure that we're providing feedback to them. That means loading indicators. It means that if something's taking a while, explaining to them why it's taking a while, letting them know that there is something happening on the other side of the screen. This is being attentive. The thing about it is that, do y'all have automatic toilet flushers over here? Like that automatically flush when you stand up or whatever? I don't think I've seen any yet, but maybe there are. The really sad state of affairs is that automatic toilet flushers actually know more about the people using them than most websites and applications. Because at least they know when somebody is there and is not there, and they react accordingly. The thing is, most of the things that we as technologists build don't even have that level of sophistication, and that's pretty bad. Another piece of being attentive is about understanding where the conversation is and where the conversation is left off. Remember, we're having a conversation, and we remember the last topic, and we usually segue into that topic. And so remembering where the user was last time and picking up where you left off is a really important part of that. Wufoo does this quite well. Wufoo is a great little application that helps you build forms online very easily from Tampa, Florida. Very proud to say. And they do this thing where when you log in, they say, oh, since you've been gone, here is what's happened. Here's what we've updated. They don't just like send out release notes and say, in version 3.1.25, released on November 1st, 2013, here are all the things that we did. They say, you're a single person, and you've had a single experience with us. We're going to pick up where you left off, and we're going to continue the conversation with you. I talked to Kevin Hale, the founder of Wufoo, about this feature, and he said that when they rolled this out, they saw engagement with these new things go out the roof because people understood it was personalized to them, it was relevant. So that leads us into the last component, and that is re-engagement. When people use our services, eventually they're going to leave, right? We can be attentive all we want. We can give feedback. We can be polite and all that, but eventually they're going to leave. And so we have to get them back into the conversation somehow, and we have to get them back into the conversation in a way that feels right and feels good to them. This is the re-engagement point. It's what makes this whole cycle happen over and over. Now, I'm not going to get into these in detail, but we can talk about them later. There's a couple different types of re-engagement in real-life conversation that we've identified. One's called organic segue. That's just where it naturally happens. Oh, did you hear about the Malaysia Airlines flight? Yeah. Oh, speaking of flying, da-da-da. It's organic. It doesn't require much. The other one's active rescue. This is where when somebody basically senses the conversation's going very bad and they interject a topic to try to save the whole conversation. Online, we can do this as well. Online, what this is about just paying attention to what we were talking about before and picking that up. Foursquare does this pretty well. Foursquare, when you check in, you can become mayor of a place, right? And so Foursquare is saying, okay, the last conversation we had is you were a mayor, right? And you've checked in places and mayorship was important. And so they'll send you an email that says, oh, you just got ousted as mayor. They don't just say, oh, come and look at the new features that we've rolled out. Oh, in Foursquare news, blah, 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 right? This is picking up the conversation at the same place it left off, so that as a user, you re-engage, and you're like, cool, let's go talk again, right? And you're right back into Foursquare interacting with them. The rules here to pick up where you left off, Remember the context. What were we talking about before, and how do we continue that conversation instead of just introducing random new topics, right? Stay on topic. Don't waver and be, if someone was using the application to do task X, right, and then you have new task Y that they've never engaged in that has no relation to task X, why would you try to get them to start doing that randomly instead of just continuing to help nurture them through X or meaningfully get them across the bridge? And be relevant. Seth Godin talks about this in a book called Permission Marketing, that really great marketing is relevant, personal, and anticipated. The same thing happens when we try to re-engage people in our applications. When we try to get them back into the next topic, it needs to be relevant to them. It needs to make them feel, just like Wufoo does really well, that we understand that they're an individual, a person, and that we're having a conversation with just them, not the whole lot of them at a time. The thing about all of this is that, as I said earlier, interactions are simply conversations. When we interact with anything, a chair, a person, a website, an app, anything like that, we're having a conversation with it, right? We do something and there's a response, request, response, request, response. Same exact thing that happens in real life. And if we understand that there's a flow to this and that there are moments that help great conversations happen, and we use that through the lens of design, we can actually engineer those moments to create better conversations in the products that we're designing for the people we're designing for. I appreciate you guys listening. Thanks. I look forward to chatting with you guys.